All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to take a moment and just let folks find their way into the webinar. So we won't get started immediately. Let folks trickle in. We'll get started in a few moments here. All right. And so it seems like participants are starting to slow down a bit. So welcome, everyone. We will get started. My name is Jake Goldblum, and I'm one of the associate directors for Global Network First Year Programs, and I work specifically with the London Scholars Program. So this is the London Scholar Visa Q&A session with our lovely visa compliance team from London, who I'll turn it over to in a couple of minutes for their introductions. And then they also have a short presentation. And then we'll use the rest of the time to answer some questions, some general questions that we have that we typically know folks ask throughout the process. And then if you have questions that pop up, please feel free to, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A box, and you can submit your questions there. We do want to note, though, that we don't have the opportunity to get into finer specifics and details on personal cases today. If you do have questions about personal circumstances or anything along those lines, please feel free to reach out via the chat function in CashShield. And then from there, one of the visa compliance officers will be able to support you on your specific questions. So today is about some broader, more general questions about the process, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so I think that is it primarily for housekeeping, and then I'll come back to answer or to ask questions to the team. But wanted to pass it over to our visa compliance team. So Poppy, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here today. My name's Poppy Kirkbride. I'm the Senior Visa Compliance Officer here at NU London. And I'm here with my colleague, Ben. Ben, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Benjamin Mokwale. I'm a Visa Compliance Officer here at NU London. I'm here with my colleague today, Poppy, to give you an intro of how the cash sheet process looks like. And hopefully to answer any questions you guys might have regarding the whole process.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so we want to spend most of the time today addressing your questions, but we just have a couple of things to share with you, just that we found useful, especially to anyone who has been unable to access CashShield so far. So I've just got a couple of slides to share with you. Ben is going to take us through the first few slides. So Ben, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Poppy. Hi, everyone. So basically, the first step here is how to claim your account. Okay, so invitations will be sent out to your Northeastern email account. So you just need to log into your account, click the unique link on your email that was sent to you by the IT service. The link is valid for 60 days after the receipt to begin the process. If it has been more than 60 days or you're having issues claiming the account, please contact the IT service desk at help@northeastern.edu. Importance of information accuracy. When completing your information in CashSheet, it is important that you take your time and ensure that all information you provide is correct. We are using the information to assess whether you're eligible for a UK student visa, and we'll be informing the UK government of your basic information. If at any time you're unsure about the information you'll be providing, please use the chat function to speak to a member of the visa compliance team. And I just need to add that you can always, reach out to your assigned VCO, which is your visa compliance officer, using the chat section on the CashSheet. Remember that CashAid uses pound sterling as a currency. Please make sure you answer any financial questions using the pounds. We recommend that you use the Wanda, which is the official UKVI currency converter. So, Poppy, I'll leave that here.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so just a couple of things. Thanks so much, Ben. Just in terms of your cash shield, and hopefully too many of you haven't had any issues accessing cash shield, but if you do, please reach out to us and we're more than happy to help you. If you're having any problems logging in or you haven't received an invitation, please let us know and we'll be able to assist you there. Now, just like Jake said, questions relating to very specific situations need to be addressed after the webinar to ensure that your personal information remains confidential. So again, you can drop us a chat directly on CashShield, or you can email us at visa@nulondon.ac.uk with any specific questions. It's also just to ensure that you receive the best advice for that situation. So I think we can hand back over to Jake to start the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy and Ben. And just a reminder as well for folks that if you need to leave at any point, or if you know someone that wasn't able to attend, these webinars are always recorded and sent out to folks after the session. So no worries there. And then we also do have our webinar playlist for all of these sessions, including past sessions that can be accessed on demand as needed. So that there's no need for folks to have concerns if they need to pop out or anything along those lines. All right, so we can get started with our questions. So the first one that we have is, are 529 counts acceptable?
Sure, I can take that one. Yes, so 529 accounts can be used towards the tuition portion of the financial requirements. So the tuition fee is a part of the proportion of the total program fee, and this has been converted at a set conversion rate. So the tuition fee portion of the financial evidence would be £51,994, so £51,994. So the 529 can be used to show proof of tuition as part of the financial evidence requirement. It does, however, need to be in the name of the student or their parents. So the account holder needs to be either the student or one of their parents or their legal guardians.
Great. Thank you, Poppy. All right. So similarly, a question that came up is, what should I do if I have received a grant or scholarship from Northeastern? Can I use that as part of my visa application?
Sure. Yeah. So anybody that has received a scholarship or grant should upload the letter that they've received from Northeastern to their CashShield account. When you're answering questions on CashShield about how you will prove your funds, you can actually select a section about scholarships and provide information about it. We will convert the scholarship for you on the date that we issue the CAS, but you can convert it whilst you're answering the questions, and then we can reassign that conversion. And then once you upload the letter, we'll be able to deduct that from the total tuition fee that you're required to show. And therefore, yes, it can be used as part of your visa application and to meet the CAS requirements in order to apply for the visa.
Great. Thank you, Bobby. All right, let's see here. Okay. This one came up a couple of times, so we'll ask this a little bit more generally. I am traveling over the summer. How do I make sure that I get my visa in time for the start of the program?
Yeah, sure. So as we know, a lot of people will have planned travel over the summer. So a few things to know. It's really important that you do prioritize the visa application over the summer in order to start the course on time. If you do have travel planned, please reach out to your VCO or drop us an email, just because we can advise you on when you should and can apply. you may need to apply using a priority visa service, which does come at an additional cost. I believe it's usually between £500 and £700, depending on where you're applying from. But this does reduce the visa waiting time from 3 to 4 weeks, right down to about 5 working days. So it's really important if you do have like lengthy travel planned over the summer, or you're not planning to apply for the visa until you return in kind of late July, early August time, we would strongly recommend that you do use the priority service for your visa application. The other thing to say to that, I guess, is anyone expecting to receive their qualifications fairly late, so kind of like July, August time, depending on what kind of curriculum you're studying, you will also need to consider doing that as well. So both with travel or anyone waiting for their final qualifications. But the best thing to do is just let your VCO know the dates that you're planning to travel, and they'll be able to advise you whether, you know, if you can get your CAS and you can apply for the visa before you go, then fantastic. If that's not possible for you, then we can talk about whether that priority service is going to be really necessary. But it's just really important. We want everyone to arrive on time so that you don't miss anything, and that you get to enjoy all of the Welcome Week events and planned activities. So just be open with the VCO about those planned dates, and we're more than happy to advise you on what's best to do for your situation.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. Great. All right. So a question about documents. I don't have my final high school transcript yet. Can I use my provisional transcript and just bring my final one to enrollment?
Okay, that's a really good question. So no, we can't issue any CASs on provisional transcripts or qualifications. So you will need the final high school transcript or the diploma. Now, that's for students studying the US high school curriculum. So it's really important to know, one of the most common questions we get is, do I need both my transcript and my diploma? So it definitely can't be provisional, but if you have one of either the final transcript or the final diploma, we only need one for the CAS. So if you get the diploma first, upload it to CashShield, we'll want to use that on the CAS. If you get the final transcript first, upload that on CashShield, and we will issue the CAS. We are also receiving qualifications directly from schools. So we're receiving your final high school transcripts to the admissions team in Boston. And as soon as those are received, we're checking these daily to basically upload them to your CashShield for you. So if we do receive them, we will use those final transcripts that have been sent directly from the schools. If you can kind of reach out to your school, they can always send the final transcript directly to our email address as well. And that just means the visa compliance officer will pick it up straight away and be able to upload it for CashShield for you. But it's really good to have these conversations with your schools now, and find out the exact dates that you're getting either your diploma or your transcript, and then communicate with your VCO when you're expecting these. Best thing to do is get all of your other documents in first, and then as soon as the high school qualification is ready, we'll be able to proceed and issue the CAS. So it's just a good idea to get prepared. If anyone's not expecting their qualifications till late, please get in touch. So kind of like mid-July time. I know a lot of students are studying the IB as well, so that doesn't, the grades for that don't get released till July 6th. That's fine, we're well aware of that. But if anyone's not expecting a qualification till mid-July, if you could reach out to us just so that we're aware and we can prep you for what you'll need to do in terms of your CAS. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Poppy. All right. So question about finances. So can you just generally explain the financial requirements for the visa application?
Sure. Yes, so the UKVI sets out financial evidence, and sometimes this gets confused with paying your fees. So this is just to prove that you have enough money to pay the tuition plus afford to support yourself whilst living in the UK. So this is just evidence to show the UKVI that you do have this money there in an account. So for the tuition fee part of the financial evidence, as I mentioned earlier, this is £51,994. Obviously, anything in terms of scholarships or grants will be deducting from that total amount. And then there's a living cost proportion. So the living cost is £12,006. And this is set by the UKVI as what they believe you should have to show that you can support yourself while studying in the UK. So basically, the total amount we would like to see in a bank statement or bank letter in the student's name or one of their parents' names. It could be a joint account with both parents or with the student and the parent, but it cannot be anybody else. It needs to be either the student or the parent or legal guardian. So you'll have to upload with that. If you do use a parent's account, you'll need to upload your birth certificate so that you can prove the relationship and a consent letter from that parent or both parents if using multiple accounts. Again, the best thing to do here is upload what you have and we can provide feedback on it. So if we don't believe it will meet requirements, we can tell you why and what you need to get from the bank in order to meet those requirements. But one of the biggest things is that trust accounts and business accounts are not accepted by the UKVI, as well as personal loans. So it's a good idea to have a think about that. But I do suggest that you upload what you do have and the visa compliance officer can assess that for you and check whether it will meet the UKVI's specific requirements.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. All right. And then another question that came up is, can I apply for my visa outside of my country of nationality?
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so you can only apply for the UK student visa in a country that you have the right to reside in. So this will either be a country that you hold a passport of, or you have permanent residence, or a long-term visa which allows you residence in that country. You cannot apply for the visa in a country you are just visiting. So for example, if you have travel planned for the entire summer in another country and you're just a visitor of that country, you cannot apply for the visa within that country. So again, it's super important to be accurate on Cash Shield. Cash Shield will ask you where you're planning to apply for your visa from. So it's really important that you basically answer that. So even if you're not sure, you can tell us honestly where you believe you'll be applying from, and then we will ask for the relevant passport or visa for that country if it's not the passport that you're using for the visa application. So for example, if you're a US national, but you also have a passport for Spain and you're in Spain, you would be able to apply for the visa using your American passport in Spain because you have the right to reside in that country. So again, any confusion around that, please let us know. But it's just the main message is you can't apply in a country that you're a visitor of. So please do reach out if that kind of situation applies to you and you need some advice.
All right. Thank you, Poppy. Let's see what else here. Okay, this one comes up a few different times, just about not necessarily the process, but once students have their visa, can students work on a student visa?
I'll pass that one over to Ben.
Right. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Poppy. I'll take that. Yes, student can work up to 20 hours per week during term time. Okay. And they cannot be self-employed, cannot be a sport person or a sport coach.
All right. Great. Thank you. Okay, let's see. All right, so this question seems to be coming up a bit. How can students get in touch with their visa compliance officer?
I'll take that. Thank you, Jake.
Students can directly send a message on Cash Shield and the assigned VCO, Visa Compliance Officer, will respond and will be happy to help with any inquiries they might have. Alternatively, they can send an email to us at visa@nulondon.ac.uk, and we'll be happy to respond. And if they would like a phone call, they can drop us an email with the contact details and suitable time. I'll be happy to reach out with whatever queries they might have.
All right, wonderful. All right, let's see here. And then this one comes up sometimes too, just about kind of the fees with the process. Can you explain the visa application fees or costs?
Okay, thank you, Jake. I'll take that. Okay, the visa application fee and the immigration health surcharge are mandatory fees that are part of the visa application. The application fee is to submit your visa application, and the immigration healthcare surcharge is to allow student access to National Healthcare Service, which is the NHS. The visa fee will cost about £490, and the immigration health surcharge will cost about £776. In total, the visa application fees will be about £1,266. But it will be important for the students to note that this might not include any fees related to their biometrics appointment. Or if they decide to opt in for the expedited service, which that might come as an extra cost, this fees does not cover that.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so let's see what other questions we have. Let's see. So this question is about medical requirements. So this question is asking, can you share the medical requirements in advance of the CAS as we have a pending medical appointment? So I think this question is just asking if there's any medical requirements for the process or anything along those lines.
Yeah, sure, I can take that one. So depending on where you're applying from or where you may have visited during the last 6 months, you may be required to submit a tuberculosis test as part of your visa application. If you head over to the gov.uk website, which is the official government website in the UK, and just type in check if I need a TB test, you can check the list of countries if you've been living there or if you have visited there during the last 6 months and have stayed there for 6 months, you may need a TB test. Apart from that, there is no other requirement. It's just the TB test that you may be required to submit depending where you're applying from or where you've been living in the last 6 months.
Thanks, Poppy. Looks like we've gotten a couple of questions about the point we were discussing a little bit earlier about the 28-day timeline for finances in bank accounts. So would that start the day students apply for the visa, or is it 28 days prior to that? Or could you provide some context on that timeline?
Yeah, sure. So the 28-day requirement is about holding the required funds for a consecutive 28 days. So that comes from the statement or the letter closing date. So if you have a bank statement that starts from the 1st of June, was about example, 1st of May to the 31st of May, we basically look at the last 28 days from the closing date, so 31st of May going backwards, to check that the money has been maintained above the required amount for that full period. If it drops below the amount in that period, that means that it doesn't meet the 28-day rule. So the total money, so tuition plus living cost, must be held in an account for a minimum of 28 consecutive days. And basically that money just needs to be continuously held in that account until you get the visa, just in case you're asked to prove it. So The slight confusion here is that we need to see it for the CAS, but you may also be asked to submit that as part of your application. So once you've met that 28-day requirement for the CAS and we can see that your statement meets those 28 days and you've held that money, you just need to continue to maintain that money so that if you have to produce a new bank statement to the government, it will still meet the 28-day requirement because you haven't withdrawn the funds from the account. So when you actually apply for the visa, the bank statement will just have to have been dated within the last 31 days and must have held that money for the 28 consecutive days prior to the closing date. Again, if you're worried about your statement, I always suggest uploading it and just dropping your VCO a message on CashShield. And then they will basically be able to help you work out whether that statement meets requirements. And if, you know, we need a statement after that, or if it's easier for you to meet requirements by asking your bank for a bank letter, which basically confirms the lowest amount held in the last 28 days. I know that finances can be the most complicated part of the CAS process, but we're more than happy to help you like review your own personal statements and help you meet those requirements. So please don't feel like you can't reach out to us. We're here to advise you on this. If your first statement gets rejected on CashShield, don't worry. That's just because we want to make sure you have a successful and easy visa application. So if it's not clear to you why it's being rejected, please do drop us an email or direct message on CashShield, and your VCO will be able to have that chat with you. Even if you need a kind of like telephone call, anything like that, just to go through it, that's absolutely fine. But I would just say get that uploaded and we can check those last 28 days for you. But it's always from that closing date.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. All right. And then it looks like there are a couple of questions about once the CAS is issued, the visa, kind of like the visa application timeline. And I'm sure that this varies depending on, you know, student circumstances or where it's being applied or different pieces, but are there any general guidelines around the visa application timeline once the CAS is issued? Specifically things like biometric appointments, is there a specific time that needs to occur during the process? So really just kind of the visa application process timeline, more or less.
Sure, yeah. So once your documents meet requirements and you get the CAS from us, you'll get a application guide and a biometrics appointment guide. So you can basically, from the moment you get the CAS, you can go ahead and make your online visa application using the guide that we've provided. You'll receive the link in there and you just head on to the UKVI website and make a start on the application. The application usually takes people between like 1 to 2 hours, depending on how you answer the questions and what information you're required to provide. And once you've submitted your application, you'll be able to see on your account your next steps. So it will say download your document checklist. So you need to find out what documents the government is initially asking from you. And then you'll need to book your biometrics, and it will kind of have like little boxes for you to go through and do your next steps. So once that application's been submitted, you will then be asked to go onto the biometrics website and book that appointment. So again, this can all be done on the same day. So you get your CAS, you make your visa application, you can book your biometrics appointment on the website. Your biometrics appointment will depend on availability. So you might be able to get one for the next day. You might have to wait a week or so. If you're not seeing many appointments become available in your location, it's always a good idea to just log off and log back on first thing in the morning. And we get lots of, not us, but the providers get lots of cancellations or new appointments become available first thing in the morning. And then from there, the kind of clock starts ticking from the moment the biometrics are submitted. So after you go to the appointment, which might be in a day, in a week, depending when you've booked it for, You'll submit your fingerprints and any documents that you have to provide. If you're in the US, you will then have to mail your passport after the appointment, and they'll provide you full instructions on what you need to do there. But this is where the visa decision clock starts ticking. So from the date of your biometrics appointment, the standard processing time is 3 to 4 weeks. And that's without the priority visa service. So you need to be aware that you'll be without your passport for that full time, because you would have had to mail it off for processing while the decision's being made. And it's also important to know that, obviously, depending on whether you're asked to provide more information or anything like that, that is the standard processing time, and this can increase in peak time. So we've seen it increase in August before to about 6 weeks. So like I said earlier, as we approach kind of like mid to late July, it's really important to consider that priority visa service, because that takes that waiting time right down to 5 working days. So if it's possible for you, and if you're kind of thinking about leaving it till that late, it's really important. But to kind of give you an overview, if you just went to the standard processing, you're looking at the whole thing being wrapped up in about 4 to 5 weeks if you can get the biometrics appointment soon after you've made the application. And then if you do pay priority, you can get it done within 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you, Poppy. Okay, let's take another look here. Let's see what else has popped up. Okay, so this question came in about the deposit that was mentioned for the financial requirements, how that's kind of subtracted from the total amount required. Does the initial deposit confirming my attendance to Northeastern count as a deposit towards the tuition fee? So I think this is referring to the admissions or deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the deposit that you've already paid does. It's been basically converted at a set conversion rate. So this has been converted to £972. And this was based on the time frame that the deposits were paid. So all students will have already paid a £972 deposit to Northeastern. And this is also stated on the CAS statement. So we also tell the government that you have paid the 972 already towards the fees. And yes, this does get deducted from the total financial requirement. So any payments that are made towards the tuition prior to the CAS being issued, we can deduct that.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. This is a question again, kind of about, and I know you just covered this, Poppy, but about priority visa application timeline. Just not sure if you have any additional information about, like, if we know about fees again, or the I know you mentioned the kind of the shortened timeline, but if you could mention that again, it looks like a question came up about that.
Yeah, sure. It is an additional cost to have the priority or expedited visa service. It does depend where you're applying from and which provider you're using. But I believe in the US, it's around $650 to $700, which is very expensive. But of course, it does massively reduce that waiting time. So it's a really important thing to consider if you're in a situation where you need a quicker decision on the visa application and you do have travel planned over the summer. So do have a look. If you're not sure or you're not applying for the US or you can't find that information on the website, just drop us an email or a message and we can send you over the link. But you will get a full biometrics guide once you get the CAS, and that will take you to all the providers' websites. It will show you the locations and it will show you basically how to find the priority service and everything. most of the locations in the US offer priority servicing. There's only a few like temporary enrollment locations which are just used to process standard applications. But there's two main providers in the US. So there's VFS Global and USCIS, which is usually located in local Homeland Security departments. So they do biometrics processing for UK visas, and you'll have the option when you book your biometrics to pay for that priority visa service. They also do various other services, like if you needed it in one day, you could pay to have it back in one working day. But also they offer services where they provide you like the return shipping label for your passport to you directly, so you don't have to worry about going out and getting that yourself. So there are additional packages you can buy. It's just best to the only one we would recommend is the priority visa service, but some students do like to use the services that provide them with return shipping labels and all of that kind of in a pack, but it's not mandatory, of course. And, you know, as I said earlier, the best thing to do is just ask your VCO if they think you need to apply for the priority visa service. I mean, it is definitely your decision, but just knowing when you're planning on traveling, I think the main thing is just if you're thinking of doing your biometrics in like late July onwards, you should strongly consider that priority visa service.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Poppy. This question came in for the CAS application, and it was asking just for some clarification about the question, will you be traveling as part of an organized group? And then it mentions that this student is planning to travel on a group flight.
Yeah, that's fine. So you can just answer no to that question. But yeah, I can definitely see why that might be confusing. In the application guide, it should take you through those specific questions and how to answer them. If you really get stuck on a question and you need help from us as soon as you can, if you can just screenshot the page on the visa application and drop it to us in an email, we can advise you straight away via email. But the best thing to do if you do get stuck on a question such as that, just save the application, log out, get in touch with us, and then proceed with the application after you've spoken to us and got some advice on how to proceed. So go through that guide. It does go through every single question step by step. So really take your time reading the application guide that is attached in your CAS email. But if you're still struggling or you're finding any of the questions confusing, just screenshot them and drop us an email, and your VCO will get back to you as soon as they can.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. And so I know that Ben earlier mentioned the conversion calculator. So we just had a question about, what's the best online calculator essentially to make those conversions. Could you provide that resource again?
Ohanda. Oh, sorry, I just mute myself. I'm on mute. Yeah, it's called Ohanda. ONADA, ohanda.com is the official UKVI FX website. That's where they can get the updated rate that's approved by the UKVI.
Great, thank you. And that will also be in the presentation, which is at the beginning of this recording, which you'll be able to refer back to. And it's also in our previous session recordings as well. So if folks need that. All right, here. Okay, let's see. Looks like someone had a question, and this is one that I can answer quickly. So it looks like someone's asking about if they book if they choose to not participate in a group flight, and they choose to book their own flight to London, will we get refunded for the ticket? So students will get refunded, will get a group flight credit if they don't participate in the group flight, because that's part of the program fee. And that will be sent on student accounts sometime later in the fall semester. So that'll be processed and refunded to students that way, or credited to student accounts. All right. And then this question seems to have come up a couple of times about student access to health insurance, or basically, what does it look like? Because I know that the students pay the medical surcharge, the health surcharge. I know Ben had mentioned that previously, but can you elaborate on what access that provides to students while they're in London?
Sorry, do you want to go ahead and answer that one?
Yeah. So basically, the IHS surcharge allows student access to the National Healthcare Service, which is the NHS. But before they can gain access to that service, they will need to arrive in the UK, register with the local GP, which is like a doctor, for them to be able to access the service, basically.
All right. Great, thank you. And it looks like there's a couple of specific questions about tuition fees and charges and things like that, and personal like loan situations. So I do want to refer folks back to CashShield and connecting with a visa compliance officer via the chat function. So that way they can work with you directly on your personal circumstances, essentially. So we want to make sure we're not covering personal pieces in this conversation. And then as far as payment is concerned, we want to refer folks back to as far as like tuition and paying for the program itself. Want to refer folks back to Student Financial Services through Northeastern University. So just making sure that you're connecting there if you have questions about billing and things along those lines. All right. Let's see here. Poppy, do you have any notes on outside of 529s, any additional account types or anything along those lines that folks should be aware of, or is that again another situation we want to refer students to connect with their VCO about?
I would definitely say if you have a look on our previously recorded sessions, we do like a full financial deep dive, which goes into a bit more detail kind of with the specifics of what a bank statement needs to include or what a bank letter needs to include. And what types of accounts are acceptable. So if you haven't watched it already, we've done like our first visa webinar, which is recorded on the London Scholars YouTube page, and also a very kind of similar content, but a pre-recorded video that also covers the financial information in kind of a deeper dive. In terms of account types and whether statements meet requirements, the best thing to do, as mentioned, is upload it to CashShield, just because we can't necessarily say, oh, this type of account meets requirements without being able to visually see that the statement meets requirements. It's more about the document that you're producing meeting requirements. But the main absolute no-nos, as mentioned before, are business and trust accounts. If you do have these accounts, let your VCO know, but you will need to provide an alternative proof of funds. but best to just keep them updated and informed if you are having to move money around. I did have a couple of students that I spoke to on the phone this week mention that they thought they had to open an account in their own name, which is not the case. So again, it can be the student or one of the parents or legal guardians. So it can't be grandparents and it can't be siblings or anybody else, but it doesn't have to be in the student's name. It can be in either one of the parents or both of the parents, alongside a birth certificate and a consent letter. So I definitely understand that the financial evidence part of this is the toughest, but we're here. There's a full team of us happy to advise you and look through your statements. So upload them. You can upload multiple documents to CashShield. So if you've got kind of a couple accounts that you'd like to use, you can upload more than one account. If you are using a few accounts, you will need to make sure the statements cover the same period. But again, just upload what you have and we're happy to review them and provide you direct feedback on those documents. So your VCO is definitely there to support you through that financial evidence part of the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. And then this one is a good one, just I think to serve as a reminder as we're looking to wind down here the next few minutes. If someone already has all of the documents that they need, when can they start the process?
So if they already have all of the documents that they need, if they've uploaded them all to CashShield, that's the first step. So if you haven't logged into CashShield yet and you've collected all your documents, but you haven't uploaded them, do that now, just so that we've got plenty of time to review those and make sure they meet requirements. But as soon as you have that CAS document, you can start straight away. If you are struggling to upload any documents, please let us know. And again, if you're struggling to access CashShield, it's really important that we find out now, just so that we can support you and make sure that we've got your documents in time for you to obtain your CAS and apply for your visa. But yeah, if you've seen our visa documents guide and you've already collected all of those documents, please start the process now, as we want to work with you as soon as possible so that you have plenty of time over the summer to enjoy your holidays and relax as much as possible and not worry about your visa application being delayed or like any potential late arrivals. So please start the process now. That would be great.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Poppy. Okay, so we may not have answered every single personal question, but that is only because you will want to connect with, again, you will want to connect with your visa compliance officer via CashShield, use that chat function, shoot an email over, all the things that Ben had mentioned previously. If you're having specific roadblocks or if things are coming up that you're confused by, or if you need clarification on specific points, please use that chat function to get that specific assistance that you need. But it does seem like the more general and or broader questions are winding down. So I do want to send it over to Poppy and Ben just to kind of give us final thoughts on things that maybe weren't mentioned today that you would like to mention, final thoughts as we wrap up for the day. A note that this isn't our final Q&A. We will have some others that you can take a look at in your application status check portal and sign up for. And then, of course, you'll be able to refer back to this recording. It'll be sent to you, but then also all of our other recordings in our YouTube playlist. So please take a look at that. If you have any additional questions, you can refer to that on demand. You can message your VCO via CashShield. But for today, at least, want to pass it over to Poppy and Ben with some final thoughts.
Yeah, Ben, do you want to kick us off with any useful tips or anything you think might be helpful?
If anything, I just want to thank everyone for that and the webinar today. And just to add that a lot of students, I think they find it difficult because in regards to under 18s, we need consent letter to travel from both parents, because a lot of students, I think they misconstrue the statements and they've been uploading a travel consent letter from one parent, and we've been having to send that back and having to get them to get a second letter from second parents, and or to get both parents to sign the consent letter for them to travel. We wouldn't be able to process the cash request unless we see a consent letter from both parents stating they agree for the students to travel to London, live independently, and attend their program of study. And if anything, you just want to add extra for students that are planning to use the 529 for to prove their tuition, we will still need an additional a separate bank account to prove the UKVR mandated living expenses of £12,600. Because the 529 can only be used to prove tuition, cannot be used to prove the mandated UKVR expense. Okay, and then I'll just leave the rest to Poppy, and yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I would just say it's best to upload as much as you can as soon as possible, just so that we can have plenty of time to review and provide you any feedback. Don't worry too much about the visa application part of it. We're here to support you throughout that entire process, and our guides will also be able to help you answer all the questions you need to answer in the application process, and will help you book a biometrics appointment. So don't worry too much. We've just got to get through the CAS part, and then you'll be able to go off and make your applications, and hopefully start receiving your visas. I guess my tip would be to speak to your schools, find out exactly what date you're getting your qualifications, and make sure all your other documents are uploaded prior to that date. I think an important thing, I just saw a question in the chat about, again, about the 28-day rule, whether they should hold off on uploading something for 28 days. Upload it even if it doesn't meet the requirement, because we can just check that the account and the statement meets all other requirements. And then once that money has met the 28 days that it has been held, you can provide a new statement on Cash Shield, and then we can issue the CAS. But the best thing to do is just get everything on there as soon as you can, and we can start supporting you and making sure your documents meet requirements, instead of waiting the full 28 days without us seeing that account. So yeah, just start uploading as soon as you can, and please do email us or message us on Cash Shield with anything that you need support with.
All right. And again, thank you all so much for joining us today. This isn't the last opportunity to connect with folks throughout the summer. We do have some additional webinars just for some other things that folks might have questions about that you can take a look at in your application status check portal. So please take a look at those if you're interested in just getting some additional information, even outside of the visa process. But we do also have some additional visa sessions coming up. But yeah, with that, I wanted to thank our visa team for being with us today after hours on their time. So thank you so much. And then we appreciate everybody being here today. And otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to folks soon.